All right, so we're talking about geometric sequences. You'll recall a geometric sequence is any sequence where you have to multiply to get to the next term. For example, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16. To go from 1 to 2, you have to multiply by 2. Similarly, you have to multiply by 2, multiply by 2 to get to the next term, and so on and so forth. Now, we used the recursive formula to figure these out before, but similarly, the recursive formula can take a long time to find higher numbers. So we have the explicit formula to help us out with that. A sub n, which is this term, is going to equal the first term times, multiply, r. Now, r stands for the common ratio. Now, you'll recall the common ratio is the number you have to multiply to get to the next term. So above, it was 2. Let's go ahead and work through the guided notes in the front. 256, 64, 16, 4. Well, to go from 256 to 64, you have to divide by 4 or multiply by 1/4. Similarly, to go from 64 to 16, you have to divide by 4 or multiply by 1/4. Or to go from 16 to 4, you have the same thing, 1/4. So let's go ahead and write the explicit formula for this. A sub n, that part stays the same. This term is going to equal, well, what's our first term? In this case, our first term is 256 times r to the n minus 1. Instead of r, let's put in what our common ratio is. Well, in this case, it's going to be 1/4. This is important. I want you to get in the habit of always putting your common ratio in parentheses for the explicit formula. The reason is when you type this into a calculator, sometimes you don't get the right answer if you don't have the parentheses. So it's just a good thing to do. Let's go ahead and find our next term. It wants us to find A6. So A6, we replace the n with 6, is going to equal 256 times 1/4. Instead of n, we put in 6 again, 6 minus 1. Now, once again, we have to be smarter than our calculator on these particular problems. I can't tell you the number of students who I've seen make very simple mistakes on this because they weren't trying to be smarter than the calculator. So into your calculator, type 256 times parentheses 1/4. Now 6 minus 1 is 5. Type that into your calculator. Don't try to type in 6 minus 1 as that because I have seen students get the answer wrong for that reason. You type that into your calculator, you should end up with 1/4. Let's keep going. We have a picture diagram. There are 3 blocks in the first one, 6 blocks in the next one, 12, and 24. So our first term is going to be 3, and it appears that we're doubling each time. So our common ratio is going to be 2. So let's go ahead and write our formula. A sub n is equal to our first term times our common ratio over n minus 1. We plug in our numbers here. We're going to get A7 is equal to, I forgot to put in our first term here. In this case, our first term is 3. 3 times 2 to the 7 minus 1, which will be 3 times 2 to the 6th power. At this point, it's probably best to use your calculator to find out what's next. I'm going to go ahead and type it in myself. So that'll be 2 to the 6th power will be 64. 64 times 3 will be 192. We'll keep going. 1, 3, 9, 27. The explicit formula for this will be a sub n is going to equal our first term, which is 1, times, well, how do you go from 1 to 3? You have to multiply by 3 to the n minus 1. So let's go down. We're going to get a sub n is equal to 1 times 3 to the n minus 1. And we want us to find term 10 in this case. So let's go ahead and replace our n's with 10. So that'll be 1 times 3 to the 9th. Now, I don't have 3 to the 9th off the top of my brain, so once again, I have to enter that into a calculator. And that will be 198,683. So that'll give us A10 is equal to 19683. Now, I will not be shocked if you get really, really big numbers as well as fractions for this assignment. So that doesn't mean you're necessarily doing it wrong. Let's go ahead and try just a few problems on here. So you'll notice they are very similar. Number 1, we have 4, -8. Well, what do you have to multiply from 4 to get to -8? That'll be -2. From 8 to -8 to positive 16, once again, -2. 16 to -32, that'll be -2. So our common ratio in this case is going to be -2. Once again, make sure you put this in parentheses. Our first term, a1, is going to be 4. So then our formula is going to be a sub n is equal to 4 times, parentheses, -2 to the n minus 1 power. And it wants us to find term 12, so that'll be a12 is equal to 4 times -2 to the 11th power. I went ahead and did some mental math. I said that 12 minus 1 is going to be 11. Notice I have my parentheses. Please make sure that those are there. Otherwise, you may very well end up with the wrong answer. And it's not worth something as simple as parentheses to keep you from getting the right answer. If you type this into a calculator, you'll end up with A12 is equal to -8,192 for your answer, okay? The rest of the problems on there are basically the same. Let's go ahead and talk about number 8 on the backside. This is actually a arithmetic sequence. So for this assignment, I just want you to cross it out. That's your reward for watching this video. Other people are going to struggle with that. So be smarter than them. Let's go ahead and talk about number 10 just really briefly. In 2013, the number of students in a small school is 284. It is estimated that the student population will increase by 4% each year. Now, this is very similar to our money that we did earlier. Our a sub n is going to equal our first term, which is 284. Increase by 4%, that's going to tell us 1.04 to the n minus 1 power. That's your formula. Estimate the student population in 2020. Well, if 2013 is the first year, this will be year 8. There's my hint for that particular one. As always, let me know if you have questions.